Embrace HIPMAT. Embrace its academic and professional reputation that has trained over 15,000 professionals in 10 years. Embrace HIPMAT's numerous professional programs from HND to BTech, BSc, and MBA in the schools of Business and Management Sciences, Engineering and Technology, and the School of Transport and Logistics. Embrace HIPMAT's professionalism, excellence, and consistency with solid mentorship from the University of Bamenda and the University of Boya. Embrace HIPMAT's skills, development, expertise, and career orientation via workshops and academic field trips. Be part of the HIPMAT family. Visit our Boya campus at Checkpoint Moliko and Douala campus at Carrefour Yoro, Jos, Bonamusari. Contact 683-70-1720. The Higher Institute of Business Management and Technology, the University Institute for Professionals.
Good evening, televiewers. Welcome to Prime Hour on My Media Prime. This evening, we are going to be treating two topics for you, our viewers. For today, we are going to be looking at history, asking the question whether Cameroon is a victim of untold stories of its history. Many persons have different versions of the history of Cameroon, plunging many quarters to ask also many questions as to why we are living and doing the things we do. We also are going to be looking at our traditional rulers. We are revisiting them. We did that already. We're asking the question whether, despite all the odds, they still can gather themselves and force all the stakeholders involved in the conflict in the southwest and northwest regions to see reason to de-escalate the flaring tempers in these two conflict-stricken regions. We are discussing these two topics with our panelists who are in the house already. Apostle AMBE Valentine is here with us. He is our consultant. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Salio. Good evening, my co-panelists. Good evening, Cameroonians and viewers of Prime Hour. It's a privilege again to be here, an opportunity to educate Cameroonians. Thank you for giving us your attention.
We also are in the company of Mr. Nji Lucas. He is a member of the civil society running an NGO that seeks to put a smile on the faces of the downtrodden in Boya subdivision. We're glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo. It's a privilege to be on your panel once more. We believe that it's going to be a time where Cameroonians will know of their history and also look at where they too can contribute in order for us to build the nation we all desire.
We are also in the company of Mr. AZIZE MOTANGA. He is an expert on issues of peace, conflict resolution. We're glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu, for the invitation. Good evening to all the co-panelists and good evening to all Cameroonians.
We are also going to be joined by Andrew Nateme Bako, who should be caught in traffic on his way to our studios, as well as Mr. MAINA GANA, who is the CEO of Develop Africa. He's based in Uganda, Kampala precisely. Good evening and welcome. Seemingly he's not connected. Can you try to get through to Mr. MAINA GANA out there? Okay. Good evening. We're glad to have you, sir. Hello?
Yeah, Mr. Leo.
Yeah, good evening. We are glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
Okay. How is Uganda today?
Uganda is doing well. It's very nice weather.
Oh, okay. I'll start the program with you out there. When you look at the conflicts that we are living in Cameroon, not only in the northwest and southwest regions, you follow intertribal exchanges and a host of other social tensions. Do you think there are issues to fix as far as Cameroon's history is concerned?
Mr. Leo, there is a lot of issue to fix.
Okay.
Let me start first of all by this tribal division is not a healthy thing for every country, not even for Cameroon. Why I'm saying that? Because in order to have a best country, we need to break this ethnic segregation, because that's the main hindrance of progress, of a success, of democracy in any country. Because the more we have that, the more politicians will use as a tools to manipulate us in African countries. Because always politicians have tendency to go to their ethnic people to say that if you did not vote me, these people, they will take power, they will manipulate us. So politicians have taken it as a tools to manipulate us in Africa. And we want to make sure that right now we as the Africans, as Cameroonian, we need to come together to make sure that this thing is erased. How I'm saying it? You see, when you go to the practical life without politics, ethnic in Cameroon has never been an issue. People has always lived as a family. They married each other, they love each other. But when we come to certain politics or to hold the positional level in the government, this thing start playing the roles. So we need to wake up at this time to understand that this thing has causing us a lot of damages. And the damage is really, really hurting, because now for the next generation, we don't know what to tell them, because we are building a lot of segregation in the countries that we don't know how to go about it, Mr. Leo.
Okay, Apostle AMBE Valentine, I don't know whether the foundation was set that everybody in Cameroon is telling their history, and using the words of George Ngwane describing the Anglophone problem, he says it's the Anglophone problem is like an elephant where blind men came around it, and everybody was trying to describe it following what they could feel and touch. Is that what we are living as our history?
Mr. Leo, Cameroon is a victim of distorted and politicized history.
Okay.
And that is the reason why we are suffering today. It will be shocking that we have professors of history in this country, who have produced students or proteges who have turned out to be rivals against each other from the same universities. You will see that those who were raised by V.G. Fanso have their own school of thought, though he was a Cameroonian professor in the university, and those who were raised by Professor Victor Ngo, they have their own school of thought. They study the same history, that come from two different backgrounds. You will discover that the history of Cameroon has not been told properly. The history is distorted. Everybody has a divergent view from each other. It will be shocking to realize that what some historians have put in their books that is circulating around is different from what others have written. I have gone through a lot of historical analysis in Cameroon. Almost every historian is contradictory to the other. How would you explain that? There are a group of historians who believe that the Fumban Conference was a farce, and others said that it was a reality. It's the same Cameroon, the same people. We have a lot of contradiction as far as Cameroon history is concerned. It looks like some people were paid to fix the history, to feel what is happening right now, and others were deprived opportunities from this large national cake, and they are trying to bring out the reality of the history. And it looks like the research that were carried out to project the Cameroonian history, they have a very, very questionable foundation. That is the reason why almost every Cameroonian has a different view. Because if at all we had a correlated historical facts in this country, we would definitely not be at where we find ourselves today. Some people say the Anglophone crisis is a difference in language. Others say a difference in culture. Others say a difference in the judiciary. And that's the reason why they are fighting. Others say it was a manipulation in Fumban Constitutional Conference in 1955. If you put all these things together, you will realize that from every indication, the history of Cameroon has been distorted and politicized. And that's the reason why we are hitting our heads from all angles. You cannot go to Nigeria, you cannot go to America and find a different history. You cannot go to Nigeria and find a different history. The history of Nigeria is one. The history of America is one. But I'm yet to see Cameroon having a single history. It's so funny that recently in 2021, in the 21st century, they are now gathering professors in Cameroon to sit down and rewrite the history of Cameroon. What happened to the original history of this country that some people are still struggling to put it now together? So there is a question mark with the history of Cameroon. I said we are victims of a distorted and politicized history. We'll get into that as the program goes on.
Okay. You have the same feeling?
Looking at the Cameroon history, I think the major problem is the system in which the country had to come together by 1961. You know, when the Republic of Cameroon, the former La Republique du Cameroon, when she had her independence, she did not have her independence at the same time the former British Southern Cameroons had her independence by joining the Republic of Cameroon. So that alone makes it very difficult to come out with the Cameroon history. I think Cameroonians have always wanted to have the right history of the country, but given that we have scholars who have not taken it as a responsibility, because somebody who doesn't know where you're coming from would be very difficult for you to manage your current state, talk less of you moving forward. So the challenge we are having today, the challenges we are faced with today, is the fact that the history of Cameroon is actually being politicized, but the major problem there is that those who lived within this period have not succeeded to give the right information, bearing in mind that most of the politicians want to bring the history that will suit their own end. With the ethnicity we are faced with today in Cameroon, a particular group of persons will not want the others to know exactly how their history was. And once this is not put in place, if we do not actually arrest this and put it rightly, then it will be difficult for Cameroon to have her right history. Again, I want to believe that the professors put together within this period as announced that they will have to sit back to look at the Cameroon history. I think it's going to serve us good. But my major worry is that if they should go by the same line with which the others went, then it will be difficult for us to have the right history, given that the major problem is those who went for the information to talk about our history did so without the mind of a scholar. They did so with the mind of the politicians, and they gave the politicians the right to determine what they need to say when they put it down in the books. And you know, today we are not opportune to meet persons who have lived before to give us the issues that happened. If the historians who lived up to date were to meet some of the persons who were not part of the political class in the yesteryears, they would have had the right history, but they went to look for the information with regards to the history of Cameroon from politicians, and most of these politicians gave the history that will favor their political positions. And so I cannot blame the historians, so to say, but I think they need to commit more in carrying out research, because they had to write down what was given to them by the person who gave them the information. So the challenge here is that let our history be rewritten, but those who will be committing themselves this time around to actually put up this history, they should bear in mind that if we put aside ethnicity, we are going to solve the problem of the history of Cameroon, because the major challenge with the history of Cameroon is the issue of ethnicity.
Is the issue of ethnicity, you think so? People are trying to speak in their favor?
I will be a bit, I will not agree totally with what my previous co-panelists are saying. You excuse me, my first language is not English, okay, so you bear with me. For me, I think when you retrace, the history of Cameroon is retraced. It can be retraced by historians, by people who lived from, because Cameroon have existed before the colonization. Because before the colonization, we're talking of Indelis, we're talking of Joyas, we're talking of so many other people. So for me, and after the colonization, we went for independence, with the struggle of independence, and we went for the federal system till date. But my problem is that the facts are clear. The history of Cameroon, facts are clear. But the problem is the external and the internal influence. As you said, as Mr. Angie said, the politicians. The facts are clear, but there is a political will to implement what it was said. Because you see, when we, Cameroon had its independence, going to the federal system, there's a clear constitution who retrace that Boya is the capital of federal, Yaoundé is the capital for this, and there were people in charge of. But what was agreed? Was it implemented? That's the question. Two, when they decided in 1972 to be a unitary state in the Fumban Conference of 1961, 61, it was agreed there were certain things that was adopted. And the Constitution of 1972 was there to implement what happened. You see, if it has not been it was not implemented. When we go again with the 1990 riots or Villemot, that gave with the democracy opening, that gave us the 1996 Constitution on decentralization. What was said? It was implemented in the fundamental laws and the laws adopted by the National Assembly or lower laws. But the problem with Cameroon history, I think, is the political actors who maybe for this or that reason think that there are some points that should not implement. That's for me. I will not say the history of Cameroon is not written. It is clear. You and me knows that Cameroon, the Southern Cameroon had its independence this day. La Republic had its independence this day. But what was the agreement? What was the agreement in this thing? For me, that's my point of view. If the facts are there, but there's a political will and there's an external will too, because I don't think France or our international partners has directly will gain or will have wants maybe to restock or to twist the history, but I think there's a political will to not implement what the initial agreement was.
History is there, okay, from what I get from you, it is an issue with politics, but the facts and actions are existing. Mr. GANA is raising an issue. Are we also suffering because our history is being told or was written by other persons, not necessarily Cameroonians?
All agree on one thing, Mr. Leo. The majority of African story has been written by non-Africans. Yes. But the fact cannot change where we're coming from, and we know also our story by ourselves. Now, we as Africans, especially Cameroonian, how do we go about to make sure that we can implement what has been agreed first? This is where we can bring the value of our story. Because the implementation of any story can make the story valuable, even though it has not been written by us. Let's go about it. Now, but the politician who has run in the countries have not understood the clear system how to implement the stories and to make sure that they bring people together, that we can harmonize and make sure that we will become a union. Right? Yeah. Because I'm giving you an example. When you take a country like Tanzania, do you know that Tanzanian people, they don't know even the ethnic, this guy is Bamileke, this is Bamenda, this guy is a Northerner, is disappeared. The late President Julius Kambarage have erased because he teach them their story and has been implemented. Everybody is Tanzanian. You can't see someone in the power to go do any politics or campaign to say that we from this area, we want to be like this. It's not there. Now, if mistake has been done in Cameroon, we want to rectify it now to make sure that the story about separating people by ethnic group disappear and make sure that we become one. Make no mistake about it, Mr. Leo. It will take a lot of time. Why? Because those boundaries that have been drawn, non-Cameroon or Chad or Nigeria, has been drawn by some people outside Africa, that in the morning we find ourselves in certain geographic area called Cameroon. It was not for us. These people nominated and they bring us together. And before that, you see, people was living by kingdoms. So the difficulties to come together, to cope, to agree, to have the same mind, same story, and make sure that we can agree to work in a party is not an easy task. We need to understand that first, and as African and Cameroonian particularly, even though we can blame, but the fact that we find ourselves in a geographical place called Cameroon that is not by our own agreement, but our own will, but people draw it and put us together and say, this is you. So they label you as something. So mean that even though you have your story, the story has some little hindrance somewhere. Now, what do we do now, we as a people, to understand, okay, we find ourselves in a place called Cameroon. Is a cage. Can we manage to make this cage a better place to live? This is my question to the panel, Mr. Aleo.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's your question to the panelists, Apostle AMBE, Valentine Ngwa. Are we not also suffering because instead of historians telling us our story, politicians are doing so.
That is the error. That is a very serious error we are having in this country. Politicians are not historians. And for politicians to take up the responsibility, first and foremost, a politician is somebody that works with an interest. He can jeopardize or distort or politicize a history for their personal aggrandizement, not for the betterment of the people. And that is the reason why we find ourselves like we are strangers almost everywhere. If you study the fondoms and the chiefdoms in A-level history, you will discover that the people from the south and those of the littoral are two brothers, Mbedi and the brother who migrated from Gabon and came to the Bamba. When they separated, those are two persons, but now the French and the English came in between them and made them look like Anglophones and Francophones. You have Charayen and Gonso, people from So and those from Fumban are the same people. These are two brothers who separated, but it looks like now they are from two different nations. They are called Francophones and Anglophones. Now, this history has not been told to the people. We don't have this history. Historians have not taken time to make every Cameroonian that is growing up, like what he said. What is happening in Tanzania, Malimo, Kambaraka, welded 127 ethnic groups to form that nation. Yet there is still a problem. Zanzibar is having a special status in Tanzania because they began agitating for their own independence. Puntland is part of Somalia. They began agitating also because they felt like they were strangers there. This discrepancy amongst ethnic groups is the treatment. It's not the differences in our roots. You cannot call me your brother and then you share a plate of food in the house. You eat all and leave me. Even if we come from the same womb, there will be a cause for concern. And this is where Africans or Cameroonians have not been told that we may be brothers, but some brother is treating the other brother wrongly. So we do not allow the history of our country to be in the hands of politicians, because why? Every politician is somebody who goes with interest. For instance, there are individuals who are in this Douala. They have decided to adopt the image or a name of a Douala man while they are coming from the north. There was a time that a certain Northeast was appointed chief in Bonaberi, and there was a clash of the titans there. He insisted that the money is distorting the history because he is not a man from the Sawa zone. All these things put together is tied to one thing: political interest. Now, when politics creeps into the minds of historians, the historians become distorted also. And that is the reason why the intelligence of our professors in history have been, I'm sorry to say this, practically have been bought over. Money has the capacity to buy away information. You know, there are persons in this country who have facts. They have the reality. There's somehow, some way, they are looking for an opportunity and they have chosen to bury those truths. Why the whole nation is suffering and wobbling in total confusion and anarchy. Why these persons are in the country who know the truth. How do you explain that? I was going through one of the videos by Professor George Ngwane. I think he's a professor.
George Ngwane, I did that interview. At the beginning of the crisis.
He gave a succinct, a succinct analysis of what we are going through today. And if every historian in this country was bold enough to come out and say things the way they are, we are in trouble today, because the historians whom we are looking up to as men that will act as guide and guard, somehow along the line, even the history they know has been bought over. When informations are bought over by money, the masses suffer.
Yeah, but there are people who are experts in a domain. The country is in crisis, in part because of the history that is told and what politicians are saying. They say when in times of emergency or when we are sick, the doctors are called upon to treat the sick. Of course. But we have heard very little from our historians. Where are they? We hear the politicians talk on both sides.
Yes.
They are talking every day that this is the history. Where are our historians?
Yes, Mr. Leo, most of our historians, you know, to put up the history of a country does not rely only in the hands of historians. You have anthropologists and sociologists.
Yes.
They constitute the team that will come up with the right history of a country. Now, the challenge in Cameroon is that most of the historians we have are persons who are working with the government, and of course, whether you like it or not, your employer dictates your moves, except you want to go under otherwise. Some of these countries where you will have fine historians who will maintain their position and give the right history to the people, you have institutes that are in charge of research to bring information, and most of these institutions are independent, but we do not have that in Cameroon.
Don't we have historians working in the private sector? You see, what you just raised, is that not Cameroon history? Why are we not talking about this?
Yeah, we have historians working with the private sector, but most of these historians who could give us these facts, because if you talk about the history of a country, it relies so much on how much you can research. And if you talk about research, we are looking at amount of money. Most of these persons whom you think are working in the private sector are some of the what we will call the amateur history teachers. They are not historians. They have not done any research. They simply take the books which researchers have written, and they are teaching others from it. So the challenge we are facing is that most of these historians, they don't have an independent body where they can sit and put up a team of researchers.
Cameroon has a history society.
We have a history society, but the history society, the Anglophone crisis we are talking about today, and many other issues in the country that involves the known history of the country by many, is because these historians over this period have not come out to tell the Cameroonians whether they are working or not. And I think that even with the history society, now we need to look at it. Where is their budget coming from? We all know that, Mr. Liu, the person who pays the piper determines the tone. So it is practically difficult for somebody who listens from or who gets fundings from somebody. It's just like my brother there said, most of the historians you see, some of them will apply for grants, and some of them are working with some of the research firms in the Western world, in Europe. And what happens is that they are giving them the area where they want them to research on. There are so many things involving our history. We have the economic history of the country. One major reason why you see where we are today, I met a young girl who is reading history in the University of Boya. Her project centers on some of the things which they used in the Bamileke land that would have fetched money for these people. This part, we are not just looking at the political history of the country. There are so many things embedded in our history which, if you do not know it, because a particular group of persons are capable of doing something, but because they don't have this information, they cannot go ahead. So I think with regards to your question, the challenge here is that the Cameroonian historians, they are committed to doing their job. However, their challenge is the funding, because if we talk about rewriting the history of the country today, as the government
said, funding, we have the lawyers have an association that brings them together. We have the medical corps that has the national the medical council. We have lots and lots of them. What do you mean by funding?
Mr. Liu, let me take for example. Let me say one word. If somebody were to research on the boundary, let me begin with my village.
Don't they have the facts already?
These facts, some of these facts, as we all know, I think my brother there said some of these facts are there, but because of politicians, they don't want to bring it out. No, I think that the facts, we have some of the facts, we do not have the complete facts.
Okay.
Yes.
What I was actually asking is, we are 4 years, 5 years into a war. Those who have been talking on TV, radio, social media, that is actually telling the history. Our politicians, where are our historians? What stops them from telling? They have been teaching for decades, Apostle AMBE. I'm sure you did history, and I'm sure that when you are trained for an art, it is that in times of crisis, let them see you. Yes, but if in times of crisis, 4 years, they are hiding.
We are not.
What then is their essence?
No, we cannot say historians are hiding. There's a problem with African history today. We have this spirit of neo-colonialism. It's a spirit where we always think that people from outside the country are the one that they should tell us our history. As he was saying of funding, we will not expect that it's an international body who should come and retrace our history. And so that's the first point. But the second point too, we have this problem too in Africa, where the master of power are the one to influence the master of science. Just to say, the master of power are the one to influence the master of science. I'm a lecturer. Who appoints me? Who appoints the vice chancellor? Who appoints the dean? Who recruit a lecturer or a professor? So at the end of the day, I may make a research, I may present. Let's take examples. Do you know how many students from the faculty or the Department of History and Political Science defend every day with the history of Cameroon?
So the facts are there.
Do you know how many at the level of BLC, at the level of masters, at the level of PhD? But what are we doing as scientists? or as intellectual actors with the document. So at the end of the day, I will write my article. I write my article on my book. They are policymakers. So to say that historians are not doing their job, I am not.
No, I'm not saying that they are not doing.
No,
their job.
or they are not intervening at this period of
They
time.
should tell Cameroonians because people are confused. What we know of Cameroon history is what the politicians are telling the world today.
No, we cannot say no. Go to like there are serious works who have been done, published articles, books, and all. But as I told you, one of the things we are in Africa, and in Cameroon in particular, is that the masters of power are the ones to influence.
You are an expert in conflict resolution, right? You are here because you think that you should talk about this so that this conflict can be resolved.
That's true.
Why do you need a policy, somebody to pay you or to give you power to come and do what you're doing?
No, I may talk. Yeah, I will talk of what I know. I will talk of what is right or the facts. You see, but I'm not the one to go and seize a gun on somebody in the bush.
That's not what we are talking. We are talking about the history.
What I'm saying, you should understand. What I want to say is that the facts. I will continue to say that the facts are there. The historians have done much to present the history of the country, but at a certain time, it doesn't depend on them to implement the history.
Okay, Apostle VALENTINE, except from the lecture halls, where have you seen Cameroonian historians tell? Because we are talking about a history of a people that is known, because all what they are doing is in lecture halls, and in a university of 2 million students or 50,000, we know the number that do history. That is where the history is limited. But a nation is in crisis where the entire nation needs to know where they're coming from. Where have you seen historians tell the world what Cameroon history is all about?
Nowhere. Nowhere in this country. Mr. Leo, we have to be very sincere. If at all the history of this country was properly told, we will not find ourselves where we are today. The people who are fighting have a different interpretation of the history. The ones who are defending have another interpretation. That has to do with the education. The root of the problem is the way they are educated. How do you explain that a man who comes from southern Cameroon believes and concludes that he is a stranger here, and somebody who comes from this side believes that they are all one? The fact that those people are agitating to separate, they have another history. Because if I thought they were properly educated, knowing that they were one with this way, they will not start asking for separation. My father was the one that told me he's my father. When he gave birth to me, I did not know. When I grew up, he was the one that told me that this is your brother. And from the day he told me this is your brother, I have not doubted him. Because I grew up to see him as my father. If I thought the people were teaching the history when we were growing up, it's because all these guys who are fighting at home and abroad, they are educated people. And they must have gone through our educational system. And if they were given the right history, they will not stand to fight what they already know. It means there was a division or a distortion of the historical foundation of the country. That's the reason why a group, we are not in a philosophical style like Athens in those when Plato will rise, Aristotle will rise, Socrates will rise. We have a common history. And if this history was properly communicated, every child growing in this nation will get up one day and stand and say, I know I'm a Cameroonian, and that settles it. But the fact that we are all coming from Cameroon, and some people believe that they are not Cameroonians, it's a clear fact that something went wrong.
Isn't it also dangerous? Because we are talking about the history of Cameroon, which is very capital, and we claim, you say that they have done much, but whatever has been done is exposed only to history students. Now you have an entire nation that now interprets the history from what politicians tell them. Isn't that dangerous? It's like a nurse now playing the role of a doctor, or a journalist that is playing the role of a doctor.
Yeah, looking at the situation, these historians are also members of political parties, Mr. Leo. Whether we like it or not, the politics on the ground determines what historians would say, whether we like this or not. And most of the prominent historians, the very fine ones we have, the professor we have, they are either in a particular political party that wants to bring out a particular agenda or not. we are seeing, let me take the case of the ongoing crisis in Cameroon. The government is saying that the problem on the ground is not a linguistic problem. Some are saying it is a linguistic problem. Others, yes, you get it. Others are saying that no, these persons have a particular route. Others are saying that no, these persons are thinking that they are coming from a particular place. Others have once said that prior to the coming of the Germans, Cameroon was one. Others are saying that no, the Germans did not divide us. Others are saying that France and Britain were the ones who divided us. But I think that if you were to look at it, because that's why I am saying that anthropologists and sociologists, if they are not very involved in disseminating the right history of this country, then no matter how we fight it, we are not going to solve the problem. Because if you look at from the sociological setup of this country, from before the Germans could even come, we are told that when the Germans came, they arrived at Douala. Others, when Herod was thinking of coming to where they considered to become road today, he thought of going to Bimbia. So you can clearly see that these two persons were coming to a two different area. And so we are not told, if we go back to look at these things, but the sociologists are not equally coming out. The anthropologists are not talking to the people. The historians have decided to say it the way they got it from a particular point of view. So the history is like somebody came, in bringing out the history, they decided to trim off a part of it and present a part of the history to the people. And sadly, the part which is being given to the people is not solving the problem, because the problem of this country, what we are facing today, it's quite historic. But only the historians and the honest historians will tell us. I was speaking to one professor in history, and he was saying that we should forget about what happened in Fumban and see how we can go ahead. I sat in my own quiet time. I said, no, this is wrong. Because if we are saying that we want to solve a problem, then we need to go back to what was the cause of this problem. If you look at this, it's because, one, the historians, like my brother also said, the historians have written, the politicians are waiving it. But I think that the historians who are writing part of the information, which makes the politicians to waive it, because if they present it to them in a way that it is going to solve the problem. Now, you know, in most cases, when you go to a hospital, the doctor will ask for your medical history. This is not just to ask you information to fill the piece of paper in front of him. He is asking for the information so he can handle your problem. He needs to know how long this problem has been there, and to determine whether this problem is a transgenerational problem or whether it has anything to do with your gene from where you're coming from. So if we do not handle things from this holistic point of view, where anthropologists are involved, the sociologists are involved, and not just the political historians to write our history, because political historians are writing what will suit the politicians, but we have the economic historians. When they want to also come out to talk about the economic history, they are not given the opportunity. Okay. So we are missing out all of this, because once the history is hidden, we may not even know, for the fact that the economic historians are unable to say their own voice or to bring out their own facts. We may be having goal in a particular area that would have solved the problem, but because nobody was there to tell us what was so precious at the time, which we could use to maybe remedy a situation at hand.
Mr. GANA, how do we explain that we are in a fixed, and those that are supposed to tell us what ought to or what is are silent? We are getting very little from our historians, sociologists, and anthropologists. And to tell you the truth, Apostle, I have made very many attempts to get the historians to come and tell Cameroonians what our history is. It's been very, very difficult, even for them to come here today. So you tell me it is a policy, it is, I don't know. What's difficult to come and talk to the world?
Mr. Leo, it's very difficult. Let me tell you why. Number one, you see, in particular in Africa, let's say in Cameroon, the people we call historians or anthropologists or sociologists are just individuals who don't have a base. Because in order to tell the story, you need to have a body or an organization can do the research and development to come out with the real facts. The majority of our historians just read books. So some of the books they read even come from Western countries, those sociologists and anthropologists. So they don't have a strong bodies who can come out with the fact to say that this is how our story started, and how do we get to gather all the information very clearly by going to the different areas, having people giving their testimonies, and come out with the clear fact with a book that can convince Cameroonians that this was our story. But now, the majority of the people we are calling historians, they are just some teachers or anthropologists who just claim they are, but they cannot even sit down to give you the clear story. Me, I'm not here to blaming them if no one of them can come out to give you the real truth, because he don't even have the fact. Now, when you go to developed country, there is something we call research and development department. When you go and research and development, you will have a complete body with a bigger budget that anything needed on the research to get the truth of the story is there. And when they come out with the facts, those facts cannot be disputed, because the people who are in the research and development are in different areas, either justice areas, economic department, story, and all of these people combine to come out to give a complete report. This is our story and this is what's going on. This is the way we are going. But the way we are right now, nobody can come out to give you the story of Cameroon. Who? Do you want a Northerner, or do you want someone, a Beti, or do you want a Basau? Do you want someone from the northwest or southwest of Cameroon? Who do you want to give you the story? No one can give you a clear story, because anyone who gives you a story, the other will contest. He say it's not like that. So now why? Because we have not gotten the complete body put it by the government, funded by the government, 100% give them the freedom, not politics inside, to make sure that when they go to the research and they can come out with the clear facts, and those people have to come from different regions of Cameroon who has been constituted by these Western countries, because we need a group of everybody who come from different areas to come together, to go and to research, come together, come out with a clear plan to explain Cameroonian, but we don't have it now, the situation we are going through. So for me, I can conclude by telling you that if we did not create a complete body for research and development, when we get the research and development, we can get a system to fund them and leave them very independent to come out with a clear story. Always we are driving on the blind spot. But right now, if you are talking about those historians to tell a story, like you are telling me now to go to be a pilot of jumbo jet, Airbus 380, and if I tell you I don't know, you say I'm a fool. You have not taught me, you did not train me, you did not show me even how to do it. This is the situation we are going through, Mr. Leo. Back to you.
Okay, that's the situation, not too good. I'm still throwing this challenge. I hope that next week the historians, those who call themselves historians in Cameroon, I know many of them are going to, I pray that they are going to answer to our call so that we can discuss this issue, because I think this is time for the historians to come out, for conflict resolution experts to come out, because politicians have been there all this while and we seemingly are not getting out of our trauma. Should historians be more solicited now than ever? Is this a time that historians should show their worth? Because when you say, why do we study history? It is in times like this, and this is a time, and they are nowhere.
To say that historians are needed now is as if they were hiding somewhere, and they just call them that you are sleeping. Just get up from your slumber and start work. No, we think at this time, we think there should be an harmonization of history. You see, what is happening today? Everybody has his own history in code about what is. People will tell you that when I was reading a book today, and I was talking to my students. When you realize the history of Cameroon, there were 4 different groups, or 5 initially, and we call them in conflict, we call them conflictual zones. You have the first zone that covered the 3 regions, the northern regions, Adamawa, Far North, and North. We have the second that they call the Paweng. It covers center, east, and south. We have the third one that they call the Sawa. They are from Campo in south, in Kribi exactly, to Mamfe. to Mafe. I have a group of the Bamilikes, and the group of Bamilikes has the Anglophone Bamilikes, who are the North-Westerners, and the Francophone Bamilikes, who are the Westerners. We have a group of, the last group I saw, yes, I saw the, you see, that's the another part, that's the history of Cameroon. That's for those who think that they want to read the original history of Cameroonians without colonization. But now, there's another history of Cameroonians with colonization that they will tell you that the Northwest and Southwest form a bloc and La Republic form another. So at this time, I think there should be an harmonization of history. And what's happening today in our country and in Africa in general, there have been what the Francophone call the repli identitaire syndrome. Politicians or other people use this tribalistic, the wind of tribalism or the wind of this or the spirit of homeland to use to achieve a certain things. So what's happening at a certain time, it will be difficult to make history. Let's take example. I am from Limbe. You see, if I have political interest, I will suit my interests and to twist maybe the history for me to achieve what I want. You see, that's the mindset of a politician. It will not be that the historians have not done their work, but now the majority, there should be an harmonization. That is what I used to I propose once, that there should be a regional or a national colloque on the history of Cameroon. So we put historians together and we harmonize. Are we coming back to a system where we see the Norwegian will see the Bamileke man as his official brother? Because when you go to Buddha, it's just a throw to Santa. When somebody in Kribi speaks, a Bakurian we hear. Or when somebody from Ide or Sanaga Maritim is wearing his, or when you go to a Basa girl who is getting married, the rite is not different from a girl who is going to marry, that they're sent to marry in.
Yeah, but you are struggling to tell this history. Our problem is, let the historians tell us what you are saying. Why are they silent?
So I will not say it. I should not be the one to tell them to comment. But
you're defending them.
For me, no, I'm not defending.
What you are saying is the authentic. You want us to believe that it's the authentic history of Cameroon, but will people believe you more than a historian?
No, that's what I want to say. I propose that there should be an harmonization of the history of Cameroon. For me, I don't think even my position should be. I prefer, as Mr. I forgot his name, the man of Uganda, Ghana was saying. For me, I think most of the historian is the history that they learned. We have still people in villages. We have old people that can give you the history of their village.
Let's listen to the national president of the PAP party, Mr. Njang Dennis Tabe, contribute to what we are discussing from Yaoundé.
Greetings, Mr. Leo.
Okay, seemingly there is a problem with that element. Can you find out and let me know when the element is ready? Is this time for the Cameroon History Society to also come together and help Cameroonians understand their history?
The question I wish to ask is, what were the parameters put in place to select the persons who were supposed to rewrite the history of the country?
Okay, the guys in Yaoundé come up with something like an encyclopedia of Cameroon
history. What were the parameters? Did they select people who were to write the history for their interest, or if people were to write the history of Cameroonians? Because what's amazing sometimes, I said on this platform, was that people go to school 7 years in primary school, they spend 7 years in secondary school, they go through theses, they defend doctorate degree, and they come back with truths from all kinds of research, and political interest buys off that knowledge with a salary. Then they are unable to say the truth. That is the danger. Now, how much money did you invest to obtain that professorate or the doctorate degree? How much time, how much energy, how much risk did you take? Then you come, you are employed by a political system, and then the salary buys that knowledge, so you cannot even deliver it because you are afraid. When people who are supposed to be on a neutral ground take sides in a country, it is difficult for them to voice out the truth again. Historians are supposed to be persons in this country who are supposed to be on a neutral ground, but most of our historians are politicians who belong to certain political cycles, and the ethics of the political cycle does not permit them to divulge certain information even though they know the truth. So bad is that not every Cameroonian is financially viable enough, academically strong enough to ascertain the historical truth of the country. But the people were given the privilege to carry out the research. They were supposed to be the ones to educate the entire nation. There's rather unfortunate that it looks like if you do not read law, you remain a slave forever. If you did not study history, you remain a slave forever under historians, because the historians will not bring out the truth to tell you, because politics, political interests, financial opportunities have covered even the knowledge they gathered from their research to bring back. It looks like I'm sitting here with Mr. Nji, and I know he has killed somebody. I have that fact, it's a reality. And he gives me 2 million and tells me that never divulge that information. That information will not be divulged, not because it is not available, but because the person that has the right information has been bought over. I think the minds of most of our anthropologists, sociologists, and historians have been bought with something bigger than the certificates they have in their houses. Because if this was not the problem, we will not find ourselves where we are today. I heard that a particular council was put in place to study the Cameroonians from America. They were to come and carry out the research and study because they say the Anglophone crisis is a historical problem. But when historical problems are not treated by historians and they are treated by politicians, I think that is where we have a very serious problem. Because there are individuals who, by virtue of their opportunities, have refused to tell the truth. We know of Cameroonian senators, Cameroonian parliamentarians, whom if you meet them on a private note, they will tell you the reality of what is going on ground. But because of the exalted position in the glass house, they will not want to jeopardize that seat and the sweet honey that comes out of that seat by telling the truth. The whole trouble in Cameroon is based on one thing: lies telling. There is the common man lying. There is an intellectual liar. There is a political liar, and there are administrative liars. If all these persons decide to tell the truth, in 1 second we'll come out of this web we find ourselves. Okay. The whole drama is that lie is the foundation.
Okay, let's move over to Yaoundé to take a listen to the first intervention of the National President of the Popular Action Party, Mr. Jean Denis Tabi.
Greetings, Mr. Leo, and greetings to all the panelists present there, and to all viewers of my Media Prime Television. I'm very happy to be part of this interactive debate, a good topic concerning the history of our country. I'm very happy that you have brought up this topic because we are victims. Cameroonians are victims of a distorted, a wrong history and a manipulative history that many people are being misled. We have those who are going their own way, this one takes its own direction, this other one takes its own direction, based on the type of history that has been impacted on each and every individual. I think it is high time that topics like this come up and things are clarified. One thing that I noticed of our history is, first of all, the curriculum, the manner in which the curriculum is being taught. There goes from the English expression, as the Anglophones, their curriculum, the manner in which the history is being compressed, it gives a lot of details. I can bet you that the Anglo-Saxon system of education, the manner of the history being taught there, have a globe. I mean, it gives students of that expression a global knowledge and a perfect mastery of the history of our country. Contrary to those of the French expression, the Francophone curriculum, it is terrible. It is taught in a very funny manner where for students to master certain details of our history, they are forced to maybe specialize at the level of either the masters or maybe defending their doctorate degree. So there is a problem only from that level. So that is why you feel to see that when there are some debates or crisis issues that have to do with our historical past, like the present one that we are facing, you see those of the other, the Francophone expression, the French expression, or let me say those of the east of the Mongo, they are totally ignorant. If you can even find some intellectuals who don't even know what is even happening, they don't even have a match of what is going on, because the manner in which they are being taught history, the manner in which the historical facts are being presented to them is not the same manner in which those on the other side, the west of the Mongo masters. Many of them don't even have a mastery of the population movement. They don't even know how settlements on Cameroon are done. But you see that those of the west of the Mongo or the Anglophones have a mastery of how population movement all began, which tribe, how each tribe found itself, whether where or where. They have done mastery. Coming back right into the pre-colonial era, majority of our Francophone brothers or our Francophone, those of the French expression, are of the opinion that they have to them, they feel that the history of Cameroon they began from the German annexation. So whenever you meet them with any interactive discussion about the history, they only limit you on the German annexation. The German annexation to them, Cameroon began from the German, when the German conquered. Little did they know that no, even before the arrival of the Germans, the British and the French already occupied Cameroon until they created institutions. Majority of them knew that the British occupied the western coastal zone of Cameroon, where they built institutions. Even before the British came, they rolled on the missionaries. They don't have those details. Some of them are just getting it just on a superficial note. They don't have a notion that at the level of the French, there was already a well-built institution by the French on the southern coastal zone of Cameroon. So all those aspects, those detailed history, are a little bit kept aside, and they are only made to believe that Cameroon was only limited to the German annexation. And little did they even know about some of them are very ignorant of the fact that the Germans had to carry a lot of conquests, that many tribes resisted the Germans, very few collaborated with the Germans. So to them, like Cameroon was one under the German, which was not like that. The German made kingdom, very powerful kingdom that resisted the German. So to a point where some of them were unable, the Germans were unable to even defeat some. So there is a lot of history that needs to be handled at the level of just even the pre-colonial period of Cameroon. Cameroonians need to know on both sides. So coming back now to our history happening during the post-colonial era, the French don't have, the Francophones don't really have a mastery of who Ede was, who Foncha was, who Joa was, who all the major nationalists in French, in English, Southern Cameroons were. They don't have that mastery. They are not really taught a detail of who they are. But on the contrary, those of our Anglophone curriculum makes Anglophones to have a mastery of the Mbidas, the Louis Paul Ojula, the Aijos, the Bebe Eidi, all those who fought and all those who play one or two roles, the Nobels, the Ernest Wandi. Anglophones must have a mastery of all of them, and they are capable to give a vivid knowledge of those nationalists. Maybe I will come up as a debate unfolds.
Mr. Anjang Denis Tabede, the national president of the Popular Action Party, giving what he understands as the history of Cameroon and how it ought to be told. We've just been joined by Andrin Atemibako. Andrin, are we a victim of our history as it is being told today? And I'll ask you, like other persons, why we've heard very little from the historians to help politicians also.
Well, Mr. Liu, history, looking at our context as Cameroonians, should be viewed on two sides.
Okay.
The story has always been told on one side, and to make a very good analysis, you cannot use one side in analyzing what really is the history. It's very important that Cameroonians also see it from the side of the colonialists, from the side of the West. How do they see Africa, or how do they see Cameroon? As in the context of Cameroon that was reborn in 1960. This is very important for the Cameroonians to look at it on both sides, because we are told our history by our own historians, by our own elites or elders that that governs our societies today. But it is very important for us to understand that our history as Cameroonians is a very complex one, and I think that this topic is very, very important, because I think this is a way forward to start helping Cameroonians understanding a way forward to their untold sufferings and the crisis that we are facing today in Cameroon, based from where we are coming from. That is the history that we are talking here today. So most of what we are finding today in Cameroon, what we are seeing happening today, is based on what has happened yesterday, and what is going to happen tomorrow is based on what is going to happen today. So there is always a decision and a room that Cameroonians can always decide to build a new nation out of the spirit of the Cameroonians, based on the generation of the people that we find in Cameroon today. So Cameroon today is not the Cameroon in the 60s. Cameroon today is not going to be Cameroon in 2050. So we are at the point where Cameroonians can make a right decision and correct some of the things that were done in our history that affects our lives today. So at the end of the day, it comes to realize, it comes back to the same point, that it is the Cameroonians themselves that can make their own history, and not the history that is told to them by either the colonialists or by what their forefathers or founding fathers did not do or did. So today we can make those corrections. It's just like a man whose father has become of age and physically weak. It is of the son's responsibility to take the father and to support the father, to give him that energy which he has lost. So this is the way I want Cameroonians to look at Cameroon, because as far as the West is concerned, when Cameroon is being discussed, Cameroon was sold. As a matter of fact, in the Berlin Conference, most of these nations were sold with certain prices and given to certain nations as their private property. And that is why you can realize that in Cameroon today, we do not have a currency. We are using a currency owned by another country. We do not own our own economy. We do not have rights to our own resources. So these are some of the things that binds our history, and that control the functionalities of our state and the mentality of the people. So if we are going to move forward, we need to start understanding that the Cameroon that was reborn in the 60s can still be reborn by the spirit of Cameroonians, if Cameroonians want to build Cameroon in the spirit of its people. And it is very important for us to understand that we cannot expect our governments in Africa, or the ones we may have in Cameroon today, to to make the lives comfortable for the Cameroonians, because it is not the majority of the Cameroonians that elected such governments that we have today in place, that are representing a people which did not pass through the doors of the masses. And this is a major challenge that many of the treaties and the policies that were put in place in the 60s, which affects us today as a people, is very important that we have to review all of these things in order for us to move forward. We cannot expect to grow using the concept or the idea of another person. It's very impossible. Cameroon can never have a good leadership if Cameroonians are not united. Leadership, true leadership, is only born out of unity. As long as Cameroonians are divided in terms of political parties, in terms of tribes, ethnicity, and all of that, it makes our unity become very challenging and allows the room for us to still be created and shaped with the ideas of people who do not have blood relations with us, people who do not have any biological link with us, but we are being transformed in the likeness of these people. So we have to understand that the many of our leaders that we have today and the government that we have today, we cannot expect much from them. That is the reason, the main reason why we are challenging the aspect and the idea of political parties, because this splits the ideas and the concept of the Cameroonians, whereby when a party gets into power, it does not seek the interest of all the other parties that were contesting to also get the presidential seat. So it now becomes a party issue leadership, and that makes makes it very challenging, and that is why we are saying that if Cameroon is going to move forward, we need to build systems which comes from the masses. That is to say that the demands of the masses, it is what brings the people together and then forms a government which is going to represent the people and become accountable to the people.
Good evening, Prime. I must appreciate the analysis you people are making out there. Kudos. However, I think you all there are insinuating that the real history of Cameroon is not being told. Even the topic discussion suggests that the history we know is a lie. So there is already a bias that hovers around the analysis you all are doing there. I think Professor Ngo has made a proper rendition of the history of Cameroon. Cameroonians, what are you saying here? Okay, Cameroonians should go and read their history and stop depending on hearsay. Francis is writing from Douala. Good evening to you, Francis. That is what we are saying. Let them come and tell Cameroonians that history that you say is the truth. Not everybody can read now. There are people in Manfi, there are people in many places in Wa, yes, who want to know the history. I am Moses from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Colonization has great part to play in history and is what defines any political entity. Some part of my okay, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we continue with the program. Welcome back. You're watching Prime on my Media Prime. We are going to be discussing our second topic for tonight, which has to do with our traditional rulers, Apostle AMBE, Valentine. Well, we've discussed about this already. Though many persons have bashed them, people are talking negative about them, but have we ourselves fragilized the position of our traditional rulers?
Mr. Leo, from my little understanding, and as a Cameroonian, coming from the grass field, I know that our traditional rulers are very powerful people. The traditional institution is a very powerful institution that can influence the affairs of this country. We have very strong kingdoms and cultural backgrounds from the northwest and southwest, who, by virtue of the orientation of our people, forms were like demigods who had the final say. I have no problem with the forms and the chiefs. My problem is, where did the power they have go to? Where in times like this, we're expecting them to have taken their rod of authority. We've expected them to have taken their staff of office and speak as the forms used to speak. I remember in some years back, the late President Amadio Ejo moved from Yaoundé to Kumbo to go and see the fawn of Banso. And when the fawn was asked to come and see the king, the fawn said, the palace does not move. People move to the palace. And we have photographs of the 60s with the fawn standing or sitting down, and the president was greeting him. I'm trying to give us a picture of the kind of rulership we had at the grassroots, where funds had the capacity to determine if you are going to stay in a community or not. Those thrones are still existing, but the persons in question are not the same. In times like this, I've studied a few of chiefdoms and fondoms in the continent Africa. The late Obafemi Awolowo, even though being a politician, was a ruler in the Yoruba land. Obafemi was so influential at the cultural level to the extent whereby his word could influence the Yorubas from any other decision that came from the kings. We go to Sudan, we have the Mandinkas and the Nues. Those are kingdoms. They had funds that when they speak, The state, what the state says doesn't matter. Most of the resistance sometimes you found in the Bangwa resistance, the Bafo resistance, the Manfe resistance, was because the people listened more to their kings than the explorers that came into the community. That was the reason why you had all those intertribal wars in those days. It is to tell you the strength and the influence of Fons and chiefs in those days. I believe the Anglophone crisis, if the Fons and the chiefs still had that authority, that office they occupied, they had the capacity to stand as an intermediary between the state and the boys in the bushes. The Fons had such authority whereby their words were law. My big 1 million man question till date is that where did that authority go to? To the extent whereby the institution of Fons, the office of Fons, are desecrated. You see in Levi Alem, somebody sits and occupies the throne of a Fon who has escaped his palace. By virtue of customs and tradition, the king was not supposed to be present for judgment to take over the person that occupied his throne. But the person is doing it and going scot-free. We see cases where people and Fons are arrested and kidnapped and kept in the bush for questioning for days.
The Fon died
yes,
last week in
Norway.
Yeah.
We see cases where chiefs are arrested and kept. Where are the deities? Where are the institutional and cultural effigies that stood for them in those days?
So many of them
it is
died
to tell you,
time.
that is to let you understand that when the office of a Fon is desecrated, even the ancestors remove their hands off you. I want to believe that something has gone wrong with the position of our Fons. That's the reason why even the gods of the land cannot leave put their hands behind them. If the Fons can go back, make restitutions, and realize their error, and stand on a neutral ground, I think by virtue of their privileged position, they can bring peace back to this nation. Because Fons and chiefs, I can tell you as a Cameroonian, have such authority to put an end to this crisis. Those children who are in the bushes are children of Fons, not biological as per se. A child that comes from any community is a child of the Fon. So the Fons have the capacity to speak to their children, and the Fons have also the authority to link the children back to the state and talk to them. So we are begging the Fons that you have such power. Maybe you did not know. We, the civilians, we, your India, your subjects, we know you have such power. But something has gone wrong with the way you have managed the power. Hope is not lost. You can still make a U-turn, get back to the roots, and build this integrity again. How can they be telling military to go and drive people out of the palaces of France to come back? That's something very far. We had the Quifon in those days. Quifon would take care of you in the palace. Where are all the Quifons? Where are all the deities that used to keep our funds, who give them authority? If at all something has not gone wrong, then even the gods themselves must be angry.
Okay, Mr. Ghana out there in Uganda, can you understand the fact that the Fons, the chiefs, traditional rulers themselves are helpless in the face of multiple societal crises that we are faced with today?
Mr. Leo, let me talk on the area I know very well, the Lamido, in my area and the Fano province. You see, first of all, that our traditional rulers, they come to a level of that they have been diverting their chieftaincy title and to politics. But at the end of the day, if you are a traditional ruler, but you don't even know what problem are you solving on your community, what value are you bringing to your community, how to build the community, you're becoming weaker and weaker. Why am I saying that? Because when we are seeing right now, those traditional rulers, especially in Cameroon, they don't have nothing to say even to their subject, because they have not built a system that this system becomes so valuable that it brings more value in the society that they will listen to them. For me, how can you see that a traditional ruler can go and look a position in a government, mean that he don't even know what he is doing, Mr. Leo? We know now our traditional ruler, they want to be MPs, they want to be member of parliament, they want to be senators. Finally, mean that they don't even know the value of the chieftaincy title they are holding. Like our brother Apostle AMBE VALENTINE was saying, that the gods of the land are angry with them because they did not even take the kingdom to make it so valuable to build system, even to build a story. Because right now our story are dying because even those chiefs cannot defend the land. They cannot even document the story to come out to teach the people that that is who we are, that is where we are coming from, and we need to build it, and even to cooperate with another kingdoms to make sure that we become united in the country. At least we can move forward. Now, how are you going to engage in peace if you, the traditional ruler, you are a senator, or you are you have another position in the government? Mean that you on which bed are you going to talk? You want to talk as a government, or you want to talk as a traditional ruler? Normally, if you are a traditional ruler, you become a partner to the government to make sure that you help Cameroon government, to have a better governance by helping him, to bring your community and to teach them their right, their wrong, and to make sure that you can pull everybody if there is a problem. But now, how do you think that now a chief or any traditional ruler can go to the bush, even in Northwest province, to call those boys they are coming? He will even scare because he's not even believing himself as a chief. This is the situation we are going through in Cameroon. But how do we come now to understand? First of all, our traditional rulers need to first to come back to know what value do they want to bring to their society. Do they have any plan, the roadmap, to make sure that the kingdom they are ruling can make sure that they build a system that the respect will come back, to rebuild it and to make sure they work in hand with the government, that if there is anything can go out of the hand of government, that they can bring it back. Those days, if there is anything happen on your locality as a traditional ruler, you are responsible. If there is any problem, the government will hold you responsible because you know who is doing the mistakes. But now it's not possible. Why it's not possible? We don't understand.
Okay.
This is my answer, Mr. Leo. Yeah.
Okay. Do you understand the traditional rulers we are looking up to? Are they in a very tight situation? Are their hands tied?
Firstly, I'll look at it again from a historical point of view, Mr.
Okay.
Leo. The traditional rulers today, we are having people who are considered in history as warrant chiefs. And most of these guys are already, they are problems to themselves because most of them are sitting on thrones which were not indeed meant for them. As such, it gives them reasons to why not become what my brother was saying a short while ago with regards to why they want to get involved into politics, they want to get involved into this position and the rest. So if they would sit to understand their history, then it's going to help them greatly, because firstly, a traditional ruler was seen before now as a symbol of unity. If you do something and you are told that you are being taken to the palace, you would be people were afraid to be taken to the palace other than being taken to the court or the gendarme or the police. But today we find a situation where the traditional rulers, they have decided that their throne should not longer have value, and this value was not taken away by the people. They decided to give it out by their actions. And you see, because they have decided not to know where they are coming from, we have two major problems. We cannot solve the current problem using our chiefs unlike before, because most of the chiefs today, they have decided to carve out a comfort zone for themselves and forget about their people. And because they have decided to do so, the past, the gods are never blind. They are very much okay. Whether we like it or not, we are in Africa, and the condition under which a traditional ruler is put in place is such that the Ngwerons and the Kwifons took perfect care of these persons. Their powers were seen. There are kingdoms where these funds, they could not even go against their people. When the Kwifon or the Ngweron would speak, these rulers would sit up and follow things right. But these two institutions that would give the chief or the fund the power, they are no longer with these people.
What are you really saying? I don't get it.
Now, the point I'm making is
that funds should be chased from their
no,
villages.
funds should sit in their villages and first of all take up their power. And the easy way to take up their power is to let their people know that if I ever went wrong, I should come back. I am saying that in most of the areas where you find the voices and the bushes occupying the palace, it's because most of these funds did not understand their history and they don't know how much power they have. I'm
not sure the people of Libya will find what you are saying funny, because I don't know what the wrong of their fund, because if this is a young man who took over from the late father, and everything was done according to tradition, for them to hear you say what you are saying here, I'm not sure they are going to be very comfortable.
Now I believe personally, let me just take the case of let me take the case of the people of Fako. If I were to
talk about
yes,
I don't no I will not entertain it. I will not want that tomorrow people I gather people to talk talk about their village.
Yes,
talk about the front of your village.
Yes, let me take the case of Isu for example, right? Now I know that there are institutions in Isu where when they sit and decide things will work. And if I am a fund who cannot solve a problem right now which we are facing, I will consult with that institution. I will not even consult any other persons, because this is the institution that gives me the power. So I am saying that what the fund needs to do is to understand that they have power. Some of them think that whatsoever was given to them was just for the time. If only they know that it was given to them for life, until when another person comes up to pick it up, then I want to believe that they still have their powers with them. But again, all we need to do is to also support them, because a fund alone does not make up a village, and a chief alone does not make up a chiefdom. A chiefdom is considered with a chief and his people. And so our traditional rulers, they have the power, but the major problem here is that most of them neglect their powers. And we are also saying that because of their involvement with other issues, the post or the fundum itself depends on the fund, and once the fund himself decides to sit somewhere else, I want to believe that even the court will not be happy.
Okay, you are an expert in the domain. What do you think the chiefs and the funds can do in this situation? Can they sit and the tides impose themselves?
Yes, the first thing is to recall that traditional rulers are actors first of divine law, because they are the mouthpiece of the gods, and two, they are actors of modern law, because the 1977 that institutes traditional rulers says they are auxiliary of the administration. So they are in the middle of the natural world or the divine world and in the modern world. So what can they play a vital role? They may play a vital role in this, because first, as the mouthpiece of the gods, the traditional part of their villages or their chiefdoms, they want to master it. I'm from a palace where there were certain, when my grandfather would tell you that our ancestors are angry, he is the only one to see the manifestation, but sometimes you see the consequences reacting physically, but he is the one that can predict. You see, at this time where the crisis is going, we can see is nobody master where it's going. We take example as Mr. I always forget his name. Ghana was saying, you see, with the fight against Boko Haram, traditional rulers played a vital role, because in security in villages, traditional rulers were at the head of vigilante groups. All vigilante groups constituted in the far north when the crisis of Boko Haram started. Traditional rulers were at the head. Why? Because at a certain time, they know everybody in the village. As you were saying, when there's a problem between citizens or villagers, you come to the chiefs. Or when there's a situation happening, it's the chief who has the final say. So they knew how to secure the villages. They knew how to work in the context of a civil-military relationship. Traditional rulers were the one to facilitate the, as at the beginning of the conflict, we're seeing of killing happening here and there in villages, kidnapping. It's just because it's due to the clash between the boys and the military. It's because there's somebody in the middle who have resigned his mission of being the father of the territory. Where we look like with the DDR, there's the Commission of Disarmament and Reintegration, to call those boys in the, do you think if maybe the chief of, let's say, Manfi, let's take example, as a traditional ruler, goes to the bush and talk to those people, they can hear, because he's first the father and he's first the mouthpiece of the god of that village.
But do they have that authority today?
Yes, because they have been sink in the wind of modernity. What I want to say is that today you see traditional rulers. I told you I come from a chiefdom. My grandfather, I grew to see my grandfather as the one when he say no, everybody will hear. But today, he's sometimes disturbed because he's the permanent president of the regional delegation of CPDM. So he becomes, of the West region, so he becomes the chiefs of CPDM. And villagers from another party doesn't see him as their chief. So he reduced his power, not because he was not the rightful person on the throne, but because at a certain time the wind of change or the wind of modernity took some of his powers. That's the same thing in Limbe or in far southwest with this issue of grabbing of land. People will not see their chief again as their chief because maybe the man was mixed up in his issues of land selling and grabbing, so we will not see him as the chief. So everything that he will tell us is that man will sell and wait if he talk for we. So at the same time, we cannot say that we have chased the God, because we are not in the secret of God to know if they chased them, or maybe the God decided to be silent.
Okay, let's get the first reaction of the national president of the PAP on this subject.
Cameroonians together. I think that's another on the issue of the role of traditional rulers in bringing Cameroonians together. I think that's another problem that we need to tackle. It goes along with what I just said about our history. We know the role of traditional rulers as far as issues affecting the people are concerned. Even before the arrival of the colonial masters or the Europeans, we saw how traditional rulers stood for their people. They resisted any act of manipulation. They stood their ground. Some of them led revolutions. Some of them did everything. Some of them were even killed. Others were even deposed from their position. Others were deported, and others went on exile and all the like. So this will tell you how the people really stood for their traditional ruler, and the traditional ruler also proved to the people that we are with you people. But now there is a problem now. Why is it that traditional rulers don't have that say again? That is where we need to be looking at it. Traditional rulers themselves should ask that question. In the past, when they spoke, everybody, they were seen as demigods. Why is that today traditional rulers are being vomited out from all sectors, from everything? People no longer have trust on the traditional rulers. In fact, the traditional story is no longer what we used to know, and that's where it brings us back now to our history. They should go back and revisit their ancestors, what the role that their predecessors played. We cannot talk of being, when they said it is true that the constitution says traditional rulers are auxiliary. Auxiliary does not simply mean you are a partisan. To be an auxiliary of the government, you are not a partisan. But today, our traditional rulers have become full partisan in politics. They participate, they are full, in fact, they are very, very active. Some of them are the ones even leading campaign rallies for certain political parties. And When you're a traditional ruler, you're already partisan and you already take side instead of bringing people together. Automatically you create that enmity. You are the one that already created that division. Those who do not agree with the other party and you are standing to stand to defend another party against another party, what do you expect? You automatically you are already becoming an enemy to the population, and you are the one that has rather brought that divisive method. How will it be possible that you, who is already partisan, can be the one to bring people together? Because everybody is of the notion that whatever you are trying to do will only favor the party that you have already taken, the side that you are already aligned with. So traditional land needs to revisit their manner of approach. They need to revisit their stance that they take on certain issues as far as crisis are concerned. Secondly, this aspect of traditional rulers who are what we call, the constitution has given what we call a DO, or appointed administrators to dictate. If you can look at it very well, you realize that close to 60 to 70% of our traditional rulers, some of them are not chosen by the people. Most at times, those who have the means and the connections, they align with the administrators and they impose on them a leader to rule over them. So if any person who is being imposed on the population, how do you expect that population to work with that type of person? So just the aspect that let the administrators desist from imposing traditional rulers, let the people themselves choose their own traditional rulers as per the customs and tradition of the people. So we should this aspect of one, traditional rulers being partisan, two, traditional rulers being imposed because of their connection, three, we have so many traditional rulers that don't even reside in their area.
Okay, traditional rulers who do not reside in the village. Hello, Mr. Leo, greetings to you all. This is an important topic, but the truth is even some of the historians who even knows the truth cannot say because the government will jail them. No freedom of speech. How do we expect them to say the truth when after saying it, they will end in prison? DJ Basil writing from Germany. Good evening to you, DJ Basil. This one says, good evening. I love your program. Thank you very much. Good evening to all in the house. Cameroon is a victim of untold stories of history. Cameroon is a victim of anachronism, displacement of facts. Joseph Wilbur said in the parliament in 2016. Suleiman, writing from Checkpoint in Boya. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Please, for the number of Dr. Aziz. Good evening to all the panelists in the studio. Mr. Leo, Cameroonians are not living their true history, not because it has not been told, but because it has not been implemented to resemble us. Okay? Fifen Yaye from Bisa Island, conflict resolution PhD student. Okay? I don't know whether you know him. Moses from Mamenda. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Colonization has a great part to play in the history. Is what you find any political entity. Some parts of Manu share common ancestral origin with parts of Nigeria. So is the north with northern Nigeria. Cameroon is defined by the colonial maps, not by ancestral origin. Otherwise, the people of the south have same ancestral origin with part of Gabon. So are many others. There was no Cameroon before colonization. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm very impressed with the debates going on today. It is really interesting. More grace to all of you on the platform. And special greetings to Reverend Apostle AMBE Valentine, a man with a mighty and divine wisdom whom I admire. A Lord Apostle, you are a blessing for this generation. More grace to you. I'm called Miss Akat, alias Mami Jesus Light TV from MOTANGA. My greetings to Mr. Akate, and I know, yes, I know them very well. And now, what concretely should our chiefs be doing? Okay, he's not spoken. Okay, what should our chiefs be doing? It is true they find themselves in a very difficult situation, but they remain our fathers.
I don't think they find themselves in a very difficult situation. Rather, it is the population that finds themselves in a difficult situation.
Okay.
A body without a spirit is dead, equally as a spirit without a body is a wandering spirit. So you come to realize that it is the population that needs the chief, and not the chief that needs the population. It is the population that makes the chiefdom become powerful. It is a population that makes leadership become effective. You see, all options that have been put down in place as far as the government and the actors are in place, I call it like the tail of a snake. They say a drowning man will hold a tail of a snake just to get to the shore. That simply means that if the masses and the population decides to choose any of these options, change will be. We see today in South Africa, the pressure that Zuma should come out of prison is coming from the masses. So Zuma receives power from the population. This is very important. We see that also in Mali. Assimi Goïta is made declare himself president because the civilian that took over Mali is behind him. So power does not come from chiefdoms. Power comes from the people of that tribe that stands behind their chiefdom. And that is on the basis where the gods of the land endorse the chief with power. It's just like a pastor in a church who got no member. Why will God anoint him to use the power on who? So you realize that many men of God receive grace and anointing is because of the masses of population that stands behind that individual and trust in him, that God increases his anointing to take care of the flocks which are behind him. So what I'm saying here is that cooperation between the leadership, whether from the chiefdoms and the masses, is very important, because here we are talking of globalization, we are talking of civilization, which are all threats to our chiefdoms. We are talking here of political parties, which are even more in our country even than chiefdoms, where Cameroonians today are divided in behind political parties than even behind their chiefdoms. So there's a huge challenge here between the my brother. Why are you laughing now? Mr. Leo, the simple truth here is that the chiefs are the custodians of the identity and the embodiment of the people's culture and tradition. The question here is, do the people want to keep their tradition? Do they want to maintain their identity? Because right, as a matter of fact, it is on this basis that is going to give relevance to these chiefs. They only take and protect what you give them. They only receive power from what you give them. And this is the way it functions even at the level of spirituality, the level of our government. CPDM will not be where it is today if his militants are not standing behind him. So Paul Biya has power because of his militants that are standing behind him. Without his militants, Paul Biya becomes an ordinary man on the street. And that's why you realize that at most occasions, when certain propagandas are built against a particular leader, he loses his followers, and then it's easy now for the opponent now to get hold of the leader. So what I'm saying here, Mr. Liu, is that it is going to take our duty and our responsibility to understand that we are both attacked by a system which seems to take away our culture, our identity, our values. So now if these chiefs realize that the mentality of his population is being driven away from who they are, from where they are coming from, that makes them become irrelevant. So they find another means, and that's why I talk about a spirit that does not have a body becomes a wandering spirit, but he lives. But a body that does not have a spirit is dead. So the people are actually dying while the chiefs are wandering. So it is a matter of understanding that it would take a joint collaboration of the masses or the people and their chief. You go in places like, for example, like the Northwest, you realize that many of the chiefs did not run out of their region because the Northwesterners have the culture of believing in their chiefdoms, while the Southwesterners have a different mentality where they have been so civilized at a certain point where with any, how will I call it, struggle, they just fall away. But the Northwesterners, like the Bamileke, every weekend, they go to their villages. Friday they are in their villages. Monday back they are in the city. A man who visits his village every week is stronger than a man who never visits his village.
Okay. Good evening to all in the studio. It should be noted that The traditional rulers lost their powers and respect when they left their kingdoms into politics, okay? Ken is writing from Limbe. Ken. This one's says, good evening, Mr. Liu. The problem of traditional rulers in Cameroon is that their power has been sold to politicians and they are being controlled by them. So to remedy this problem, let the president give their power because he has taken part as the fund of funds in Cameroon. Is Mr. Gerard writing from Bamenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Here in Lohe, just after Loom, we are no longer receiving signals of your channel. Please, your technician should do something, please. Many persons are complaining. Can you just reprogram your TV? If you had that problem, it started yesterday, just do a research of your TV or you reprogram it, you're going to receive us. We are still there. It's not an issue of the technicians. Good evening to you in the studio. The Pope just said it all. The participation of traditional rulers in politics isn't helping situations in our country. Terence is writing from MOTANGA. Apostle AMBE, Valentine, what concretely do we expect our fathers to be doing to rebuild that relationship as described by Andrew Natemibako?
When we talk about the population giving the chiefs power, and the population, without the population, the chiefs cannot have power. It is your relationship with people that determines how they hail you or they admire you. I am sure if the chiefs were neutral, as institutionally they are demanded to be, because under normal circumstances, chiefs are supposed to be neutral on political matters. That gives them the opportunity not to have rancor with the state nor with the masses. They were supposed to come in between these two persons right now as a bridge to call both parties for a negotiation. What is so bad is that the chiefs themselves have become regional councillors. Under what? Under a political party. When monarchy, customs, traditions are politicized, they lose their original essence. And this is the reason why our chiefs are considered by their own people as black legs, in quotes. They are considered by their own people as traitors. They are equally considered as sellouts who have taken side to them, to the knowledge of the people. They have taken side with the people who are against them. The chiefs were normally supposed to be persons that will come out and say, you are my children. The government is our government. I cannot throw you children. I cannot throw you government. My business here is to make sure that peace reigns between the two of you people. But when a chief is wearing the emblem of an MP, he wears the emblem of a senator or a regional councillor, already the people have a notion that because you are under CPDM, you have taken side. If the chiefs belong to no political party, the reason why I speak freely on television, because I don't have any political inclinations. I am a clergy. And that is what is expected of both traditional rulers and clergies in moments like this. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, in the days of apartheid in South Africa, he said, anyone who is silent in the midst of an oppressor is an oppressor. He could speak like that because he was on a neutral ground. Nobody saw him as an ANC member. Nobody saw him as a team of the white minority domination. He was on a neutral ground. And this is exactly what we were expecting of the funds of the North and the Southwest, where the children will stand and look at the fund and say, no, this man is innocent. He's not part of the government. He's not part of us. I think what he's going to be saying can be of a better solution to all of us in this community. But when you see chiefs standing as campaign managers during election periods, it tells the children that the chief is a chief of a political party members in that community. Okay. The chief is not a chief for the people anymore.
Okay. Mr. GANA, what should be the way forward to getting our chiefs back to the positions that they used to occupy?
Basically, there is one or two things they need to do. Number one, they need to understand exactly their position. They need to know what they have to do for their population. As our brother Apostle AMBE Valentine said that, number one, these chiefs, they need to go out of politics. Because the moment you go out from politics and they take their position as a traditional rulers, they will get to the level that the population will listen to them and they will play a neutral ground to be a bridge between the population and the government. But now, both of them, majority of that, our traditional rulers now, they have one side, the government, the political parties. So it's become very difficult and the kingdom's becoming weaker and weaker. And the only way to make sure that they get back on their track, and if there is any problem, they can solve it, like the one happening in Boko Haram area or Northwest or Southwest region. They need to make sure that they resign from any political party and go back to their drawing board to make sure that they take their responsibility. We understand many of those kingdoms right now, to manage them financially is very difficult, so they need to be grabbed somewhere to get something. It's understandable, but the issue is that they have not put a very good economical system that can maintain the kingdom. Let us also not go out of the blaming them. We have to understand what's happening. Those days, those traditional rulers, the kingdom was getting some funds, taxes from the population. Now it becomes quasi impossible, ladies and gentlemen. We need to acknowledge that and understand why also they divert from their position to go and hold themselves from a political party. We need to address this issue. In my area, when I'd grown up, they say that if you are a shepherd and there is one sheep missing, who is responsible? You are the responsible one. So our leaders, our traditional rulers are responsible now, but they need to understand what is their problem, how can they go about solving them to be the real chiefs. Okay. To make sure if there is a problem, they can go even to the bush to call these people, bring them back and discuss, make sure that peace reigns in the locality, Mr. Leo. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. What should be the posture of our traditional rulers, even though the terrain is quite difficult? Can the chiefs of the Southwest come together, the fronts of the Northwest come together to actually discuss and say, maybe things are not working out, we still can do something?
Yes, I think the traditional rulers, their position is still there. Nobody can take it away because it was not given to them by man. It was given to them by a divine law which is in place. And I think the population also of these areas, because once a traditional ruler is not on the ground, so many things cannot be in place. Mr. Liu, please, I just want to also say that we have a new breed of traditional rulers these days. When they take over their parents, at the time they have also had their own life. We had some who were already either students or who were working somewhere. And if we are saying that they should go and resign, it may be good, but I think that it may also affect the village economically. So it is time for these villagers, it is time for us to see that we protect our people. I'm glad with what Mr. Ngana said. These days, we barely hear people that, because even those who were in the Southwest region, they will gather what they have to gather, be it within the end of the month, and they will send it to the village so that the fund could be taking care of it. But today, we are not really seeing that. So we cannot also ask these persons to go and resign and then come back to the village. We need to ask ourselves, are we ready to receive these persons? Because tomorrow we are talking today about the history that it's been distorted. If we should continue the way things are going, then I want to believe that some villages at a particular point in time will have a problem of a traditional ruler, because those who are taking it up right now, those who think they are in control, it is affecting the village. So I think that our traditional rulers of the Northwest and Southwest, they should first of all have a common front, because we still know them as our authorities. They should have a common front, and why not meet the government and make suggestions on how we can end this crisis? Meanwhile, the population on the ground, we have to give them their place, because if they are not in their position, it will affect us also. When Jesus left Israel and went to Egypt within those early days, whether we like it or not, his mission in Israel was not really fulfilled, and so he could only come back to Israel to fulfill his mission, because Egypt was not a place where he was going to fulfill his mission. So I think that if we understand that our traditional rulers, they wield a certain power, and the gods of the land are with them, and developmental issues are also tied on them, then it is possible that we achieve this only through our support behind them.
Okay.
We cannot let them go out as prodigal rulers.
Yes, Mr. yeah, it's Doctor. I'll send it a text. That is
Aziz Motanga. I
Is-
prefer
Doctor.
Aziz Motanga.
Okay, Aziz Motanga.
I prefer.
Yes, our traditional rulers, they themselves, they need help. Like Apostle AMBE at times will say that the Christians should pray for them.
Yes, I want to say first, I am not for the fact that a traditional ruler has a position in the administration or in the parliament or in the senate, because in our present context it's a plus for the village, because he can easily lobby for the development of the village. For me, I think the first thing is that traditional rulers should renegotiate the social contract with their population, because what we are seeing in most villages today, the villages are apart because they want a father who becomes a father. They want a father who would think, because there are some villages, we'll take an example in the North region where the Lamido who just died of Garoua, he was a minister, secretary of state, but the village have benefit a lot from him. The kind of hospitals, the kind of instrument in the various hospitals, during this COVID time, what they received as gifts or as a pre. That's why I say they should renegotiate. We should see a chief that thinks for his people, that can defy. Let's take example. 2 weeks ago, chiefs from Fako, they went to see the prime minister to ask him that it's 1 year that a decree creating the port or the authority Limbe Gypsy port was announced by the head of state. Since 1 year, we have not seen nothing. That is a means of pressure. That's what people expect of chiefs. They will not expect to see chiefs who sell the whole villages. So I think the first position is to renegotiate the social contract with their people. After then, the population will regain back the confidence. I continue to think that if traditional rulers, as individually, as a group, or let's say Southwest chiefs, should sit and go to those boys, I'm sure something good may come.
Tell them that you are our children. If you want to kill us, okay?
Yes, I don't think somebody can kill a chief.
No, but they have killed them.
Yes, I'm saying in the fact, the way, the manner you appear to them, or the manner you present yourself to them. You see, because there have been something, chiefs have been silent. They have not addressed those boys. You understand? But I think if the social contract is negotiated, because the as you said earlier, they consider them as black legs. But if they come to them and say, you are our children, we are fighting for the same goal, we are fighting for the, if I see that I can be fine with you, why should I be against you?
Andrew Atemebako, can the newly created House of Chiefs in the Southwest and Northwest region help any situation?
Only and only if the population stands behind them, change will come. And they are there for change. And I think that the population also should show their own side of participation and collaboration. I think that has always been where the major challenge in leadership in Africa has always been. We have always struggled where parties do not find a bridge to merge together. You see, Mr. Leo, we cannot talk about chiefs here when we are building a society that looks like the West. We cannot talk here about chiefs when our educational system removes the values of all of these things away. You see, when before, Mr. Leo, in our history, we used to talk about the founding fathers of fighting for the self-emancipation of Africa and all of that. At that point, it was not important, but today now it's a growing concern. Everybody is almost talking about Pan-Africanism, Africa coming together, seeing what we can make our society better. That is how tomorrow we are going to lose the chiefs. If we do not, like I'm still saying, it all depends on us. What are we willing to let go and what are we willing to do? Like also the apostle said, it's not how much time you spend, but how much you put in the time you spend. So this is going to take the how will I put it, the position of the population in the House of Chiefs or the regional councillors or whatever has been put in place by the government, which are called the tail of a snake. It's very dangerous, but if the population holds it, it will take them somewhere. So whatever it is will take a corporation to make a full organism of a body to function. You cannot expect an entity or a deity to work when the body does not stand behind. The head must always be on a neck and on a shoulder, on a body, residing on the body. So where is the role of the masses? I keep crying out, Mr. Leo, that when the teachers and the lawyers went out, it took the masses to react against the government poor behavior towards the teachers and the lawyer. Today, because of the masses, look at where we are. So why don't we bring back the masses on the table and say, okay, we have the chiefs that we are presenting them before you as an option. Do you want to work with the chief? If they say no, we have the MPs. If they say no, we have the senators. If they say no, we say we have the clergymen. Until they decide among which of these people they want to work with, or do they want to manage themselves? Let us be able to get the opinion from the population instead of just suggesting without getting their own opinion. So the opinion of the masses is very important. What do they want?
Okay. What do they want? That is going to be our topic for tomorrow on Prime R. We're going to be looking at the position of the common man. What are they really saying? Are they just suffering in silence? Toasted from left, right by politicians. Let us get the last reaction of the national president of the PAP party.
The Francophones, the way the manner in which they are being taught, even on their history, is very, very funny. They give the impression that heroes or nationalists.
That's a technical mix-up there, but we are out of time. We are going to be ending at this juncture. I want to thank you, Mr. GANA, for participating.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Leo, thank you for having me, and have a wonderful evening.
Okay.
And good evening to Cameroonian.
Okay. And to you, Apostle, we're glad you were part of the show.
It's a joy to be here.
Okay. And Lucas, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo, and fellow panelists.
Aziz, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope we have helped to edify Cameroonians.
Okay. We hope that you are going to be there subsequently. And to you, Andrew Datimebako, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kum Leonard, and special greetings to all the panelists who are here tonight. Thank you very much.
We want to thank you all who took time off to watch the program this evening. Thank you to the production team. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.